We're not all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the CEO, founder of Tellwell, over 6,000 book published, and of course, the author of the book, The Call to Authorship, none other than Mr. Tim Lindsay.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about authorship, writing, publishing, and maybe a little bit of entrepreneurship.
Definitely, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Tim. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep up the good work and create more books that make the world go round. And today, let's talk about your book, The Call to Authorship. In the opening, The Call to Authorship, you frame writing as a call rather than just a project. What was the pivotal moment or realization for you when this topic is shifted from professional advice to a personal mandate that demanded a book?
Well, it depends if you're talking about for me or for the authors who we've worked with. Over the last 10 years, we, as you mentioned, worked with about 6,000 authors. And for most of them, we ask them, we do these surveys where we say, why did you publish your book? What are your goals? Who is the book for? What is your reader? And so we have literally thousands of insights into the hearts and minds of writers and authors and why they publish. And so I sort of went through this database of answers to the question, why did you publish? And why did you self publish? And what are your goals? And just sifted through it and was trying to find a pattern. And eventually I did find a pattern. And there's really three reasons people publish. And I wanted to share that in this book and also share the sort of how to steps of it. So, those three, I call them why publish archetypes. The first one is just about giving. People feel like they have something in them, a set of ideas and a story that is worth sharing. And because they feel it is of service to people. So, that could just be simply entertainment, or it could be a lesson they've learned, or it could be a struggle they went through and they learned through that process and they're ready to share that with others. But then there's a second set of reasons, which is people using a book in a sense like a tool to build something. I call it the strategic why. So maybe they're building a coaching practice or a business or a service of some sort, and the book is really a tool. But the third one is a little, besides the give, the service, the build, the strategic piece, the third one is it's more of a journey. It's people, they don't, they're not using the book as a big strategic piece, and they're not fully even sure that the book is of value, but they go down this path of writing, maybe for healing or to make sense of their journey, and or it's a bucket list item, but it's almost like it's not a means to an end; it's a journey in itself. And so I've kind of unpacked that in a lot of readers. So for me, it was 10 years of working with authors and having all these insights, and then really trying to reconnect with what it means to be an author myself. And so I went down the journey of authorship again 10 years earlier when I started Tellwell. I wrote a book and that kicked off the business. And now here I am 10 years later, 6,000 authors later, and felt like I had a whole bunch of lessons learned, which I still needed to make sense of myself. And so that's what this book does, the call to authorship, how and why to write, publish, and promote a nonfiction book. And I turned it into a 10-step method.
And thank you so much for sharing to the world, Mr. Tim. The title suggests a spiritual or vocational dimension. How did you balance writing a practical how to guide with exploring the deeper, almost philosophical why of becoming an author?
That's a good question. I think it does start with that question of why, why, and trying to understand it. And for me, it was looking at our customers. We basically do things like helping authors edit their books and design it, and how do they create their ebook and use print on demand, and that's what we do. But it was trying to understand the why and to really listen to authors. And so, yeah, I was grappling with that because I wasn't sure. It's like there's some people who historically have thought self-publishing is vanity publishing. It's just about ego or something. But I knew that wasn't right, especially when I listened to authors. And so I explore that in the book. It kind of falls under the journey why, but it's exploring things like how people take something that was maybe painful that they went through and over time develop through from their open wounds scars with some maturity and with some lessons that they learned, and they are ready to share that with other people. That's one area. Another area I explore is the world of motivation, which every author has to struggle with should they even write and publish a book. And so I kind of unpacked, for example, went into psychology, this world of self-determination theory. There was some psychologists in the 70s, and they they did these experiments with basically like Rubik's cubes, Soma cubes, and they had two groups of people, and one they gave a monetary incentive to to solve the problem. The other they didn't. And what they found is when they removed the monetary incentive to solve the Rubik's cube problem, the people they stopped trying to solve the problem, whereas people who were intrinsically motivated, just for the sake of solving the problem, they kept working at it longer, trying to solve the problem. And I went down this rabbit hole too of what has become positive psychology. One of the early practitioners, a guy named Martin Seligman, he had this moment where he's in his garden in his backyard, and after a long day of work, and his little daughter was with him, and he kind of snapped at her because he was just a bit ornery. It was the end of a long day, and you know how kids are, and he snapped at her. And so his little daughter, he she looked at him and said, "Daddy, I used to be, I used to complain a lot, but now I no longer do. You can stop. You can learn to not be a grouch too, Daddy." And he took that, and he it inspired him because he had been working under this behaviorist psychology framework where it kind of looks at human beings as stimulus and response, and we've got our what we want, the sort of Pavlovian response, and that sort of method of psychology was just, it looked at people like machines in a sense, and it didn't really have room for creativity or envisioning the future or free will and all these other parts of our psychology. And a lot of psychology looked at problems, our psychological problems, instead of what he shifted to, which was looking at human flourishing. And so he became a leader in what's now called positive psychology. And over years and years and years of trying to figure out like what is well-being, what creates happiness, he simplified it to a model that he calls PERMA, PERMA. And that's something I touch on in the book and sort of apply to why we write books. It relates to happiness or well-being or meaning, and I can certainly unpack what the PERMA is, but the reality is writing a book is also difficult, and it can be frustrating. And so, but so can lots of meaningful things in life. So, with that, it's something I grapple with the book. It sort of leads you to what are all the limiting beliefs you might have in your head that stop you from doing something like writing a book, and how do you approach it? And one way to approach it is with more of a growth mindset. But certainly, there's a spiritual element to what motivates many people, and that could be part of a formal religion like Christianity or being a Muslim. There's often parts of religions that are about giving, about selfless love, about creating something that keeps on giving after we move on from the world. And then there's people who are maybe just exploring their own lives and realizing something is missing, and they're looking for something that's bigger than just themselves, and they're starting to think maybe that word legacy or impact. And often a book can be a tool for that, just like it can be a tool for a business. And a business in itself can be about legacy, it can be about positive impact. So, where do you want to go from there, Daniel? There's so much that motivates people to write a book, and then so many things that hold them back. And the reality is, most people actually do want to write a book one day, and most people never do because there's just too many things that get in their way.
Very well said, Mr. Tim. You've coached many authors. What was the one recurring painful struggle you witnessed that ultimately convinced you the world needed a specific book?
There's so many inspirational authors we've worked with. One of our authors, and I think this illustrates uh, it illustrates why people publish. One of our authors was a accountant, Azim Jamal, and he was an accountant, and he got asked by the chair of a nonprofit to go to Pakistan to assess the financial needs of Afghan refugees. So he goes over there for this nonprofit, and he meets with a group of these Afghan refugees. There's about 10 of them. It's in a tent, and they come to him in a circle, and they actually had some, I think it was like dried nuts and some tea that they had created for him. And they walked up to him and they gave him the tea and the nuts, and he looked at them, and in their eyes were just kind of glowing with happiness in a sense. And it sort of struck him as odd because these are these people who are in a horrible situation. And and he realized that what was making them happy was actually they were giving him this tea, and they were offering him something and caring for him, and this actually made them feel really good. So he sat down with them and he listened to their stories, and they talked about, you know, being their refugee stories. So they had walked over the through these mountains to get to this refugee camp. One of them was pregnant and had to sort of give birth on the journey. One of them was one of their mothers was sick while they were traveling through the mountains, and he just heard all their stories and was kind of overwhelmed with um, what he heard. But what he learned from that experience was sort of that act that they showed with the tea, and the what he learned was what he calls his live to give philosophy. And he saw that, and basically he realized that people are hardwired to be helping and to be giving. And then when we do that, and he refers to some many studies by Dr. Stephen Post, who has studied sort of the power of giving and its effect on human beings. I tried to read one of his books. I remember it talking about little boys are especially, it gives them all sorts of health benefits if they actually volunteer and do something that involves giving. So so this is one of our stories of our author Azim Jamal, but he took that, he had a moment in life where you had to make a choice, and for him it was, you know, go down the path of his accounting business or sort of switch courses and pursue this insight that he had about giving. And that's what he did, and he developed into a speaker and a coach, and he authored 10 different books. One of them he did with us, Spark, from success to significance, and it tells a story of an executive who's outwardly successful but is inwardly struggling, and they're not feeling successful inwardly or spiritually. And so Azam is an example where he had his own sort of journey of discovery, and he captures that in many of the 10 books that he writes. And his philosophy is all about giving, and that's what he does with his books. But then he's also an example of someone who took that and now he also used it to build something, to build a speaking career, a coaching career. And of course, those are businesses. They benefit himself in some way, but really those are also about another level of giving. So that shows, I think, how a book can be a tool. It can be a tool to build something, and it's like who's to judge? Someone's in is someone building a business to help people or to for their self gain, and someone more important than me needs to look into people's souls and discover that. But I think it it shows that a book is a powerful tool and it can be part of a meaningful journey. And a big part of that can be about service to others, and that's a big part of spiritual journeys. I mentioned perma. Perma is like positive emotion, engagement. Engagement. Happiness isn't just about being gleeful all the time. Yes, you want to do things like gratitude and maybe meditating or prayer, and these can give and laughing and jokes and what that's part of happiness. E is the engagement piece, though. It's losing yourself in work or art or being engaged where you sort of lose track of time. And that's not, that's, it's not, you're not thinking about yourself. R is the relationship piece. We need others in our life. That's so much. It's just how we're hardwired. M is the meaning piece. That's a big part of that is just finding something bigger than yourself. The more you just think about yourself, it's just, there's something depressing about it. um, so finding a reason just to actually be thinking about not yourself is incredibly healthy. And then the A in that PERMA model, that's the positive psychology, the PERMA model for well-being is achievement. And I'm not an expert on this, but I think it's just the process of kind of setting goals and being part of a narrative and develop some competency for things, feeling like you have the skills and you're contributing and you're setting goals and so that's the perma model. And that's one of our authors that I think is representative of so many of the other authors we have worked with. And so in my book, I'm in a sense uh, stealing their stories or trying to borrow the stories and the wisdom that we've learned from these thousands of books and trying to synthesize it and then turn it into a practical way to help people with their own journeys of writing a book. And the first step is getting clear on your why. What's your mission? Who are you helping? But then, if you want to use a book as a tool to support a course or a community or a coaching practice, how do you do that? And then how do you actually, practically speaking, get through the steps of writing and publishing a book? Because so many people get stuck somewhere along the way.
Very well said, Mr. Tim. So, as a CEO, founder of Tellwell, as well as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
What are my short and long term goals? Well, I'm part of the team at Tellwell, and I know one piece of our mission is to remove barriers to publishing. And one part of that is also building community. So we're looking for ways that we can connect people with either authors and publishing professionals or authors with other authors to support each other. And we're trying to have as much fun and learn as much as we can while we do that.
Good
Oh,
luck to your goals, Mr. Tim, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
I have a little tool. It's available on the calltoauthorship.com or calltoauthorship.com. It's the first part of the book. It's basically a one-page plan to get clear on the why, the who, and the how of writing your book. And a part of that is crafting an outline and crafting a little writing habit. And it can be a lot of fun. I say enjoy the ride. That's my piece of advice. And I also say it's better than wasting your time scrolling on your phone and getting angry. So, if for no other reason, that's a good reason to write on and move forward.
Move forward, people, not backward. Okay. If you have the passion to write, write, and share to the world. Ask for help for Mr. Tim if you need for help. So thank you for that advice, Mr. Tim. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
If for writing a book, I was inspired by many. One that comes to mind is Write a Must Read by A.J. Harper. It's a very inspirational book about how to write a good quality book that people will really resonate with. Write a Must Read by A.J. Harper.
And thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Tim. So tell us, for the listeners who has the seed of a book idea but is terrified to start, what is the one sentence from your book you would tell them to hold on to as a mantra?
Hmm. Don't write a book, just write one page of a book over and over again. That's a mantra I
Interesting.
would Yeah, that's a mantra I would share because people get overwhelmed, but really they don't need a lot of time to write a book. People often think that. They think they need weeks or months. Really, they don't. What they actually need is just a little bit of time over and over again. I wrote this book. It's about 300 pages. I've got two kids. I've got a family. I've got a business I'm running. Very busy, but I was able to audit my life and figure out where that 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, and then track it with a tracker and enjoy creating a new habit. And it's really quite enjoyable when once you start making progress, and again, it's just bit by bit. Don't write a full book, just write one page over and over again.
One page at a time, people. One page at a time. Baby steps. Don't be overwhelmed. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Tim, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season abstract poetry and third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season too, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101, our fifth season, science 101, sex 101, fourth season, and my baby podcast, spiritual awakening 101, trivia 101, law 101, mental health 101, motivation 101, entrepreneurship 101, and of course, my Bible verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Tim, completing this book is a milestone. Does it feel like a definitive statement on your philosophy or the opening argument in a longer conversation you plan to continue?
It's part of a longer conversation. In a sense, I sometimes think of that Disney story Dumbo with the feather,
Mm-hmm.
where he needs a feather to feel like he can fly, but really the feather is just something that um, makes him feel empowered that he can fly. And for me, a book is an excuse to have many more conversations in the months ahead. So I'm excited for that.
Well, good luck for that book, Mr. Tim. And can you please invite our listeners to support your books, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. On my author website, calltoauthorship.com, there you can get, if you're interested in learning about publishing, I've got a guide to publishing, or you can find the book there. I've also got a little course that guides people through completing the one-page plan for how to write, publish, and promote their nonfiction book.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Tim Lindsay because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to rise. So I have one more question, Mr. Tim, before I let you go. Silence publication. What has been the most unexpected or moving way a reader has told you to the book change their trajectory or mindset?
One of the first things I did after releasing the book was an in-person workshop in my hometown, and I just had a couple days to promote it, but I got about 15 people to show up, and they all completed a feedback form after the workshop, and one of the women said, "You made my book possible." She just didn't know if it was really a thing she could do, but she came away feeling and getting it and feeling the whole process was demystified, and she realized, I can do this, and it makes sense to do it for her. So you made my book possible. That was great to hear.
Yes, people, mindset. I can do this. So, Mr. Tim Lindsay, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, people. See you soon.